Hi, this is Tom Soane, and welcome to the Anonymous Landlord podcast. And I've got a veteran Anonymous Landlord interviewee with me right here. Someone who I now associate as a good friend now, very successful guy in property. This is probably one of my favorite guests now. And he's going to tell you all about making money in property, focusing on the right areas, but also Mr. Ryan Luke is going to give us his story on what the hell he's been up to over the last couple of years while everybody else has been struggling with COVID and interest rate rises and Brexit and all these crazy things that we've all had to endure. Mr. Ryan Luke has smashed it. So I'm not going to take up any more time. Hello, mate.
Hey, pal. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, I mean, a bit of a hero introduction, which, you know, don't get me wrong, it has not been easy whilst everyone else has been. I just make it look that way, but there's a lot of early mornings and late nights in there. And as you'll know, I think building any business is very much hard work. And I think these people that live by this 4-hour work week are full of shit, to be honest. But no, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Well, look, it was a hero intro because there are a lot of people that have seen your journey. And we were just talking about it just now, back to the first Anonymous Landlord podcast and how much things have changed. So look, let's start off with people that don't know you. What do they need to know about you?
Yeah, well, Ryan, obviously from Newcastle. I started Airbnb, as people know it, back in 2019, and as we stand here today in 2022, we operate about 80-90 million quid's worth of property across 34 worldwide locations. Probably any day now we're about to open up in the USA, and it's just, you know, gone from strength to strength really. So very much specialize in short-term rentals now. I know we were speaking before about, you know, diversification and kind of what you're doing, but for me now it's very much that's the focus, and has been for the last probably 18 months. Pretty much since COVID started to die off, we kind of just, you know, as I kind of said earlier, like if you're good at something, just do more of it, and, you know, just keep doing it and doing it. And I think for me, I've always got a vision on this exit plan, and I've always had that even since the early days of like figuring out this was actually a business. Then I figured out this is actually a business with some value. I've always had this exit plan, and I'm just kind of striving for that at the minute, and just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Whether I take it or not at the time, I don't know, but at least we can get there and see.
What I love about what you just said there was about having something to focus on and sticking with it. And it's a really good, it's not just a property rule, is it? It's a business rule. If you think back to early days of, I don't know, the United States of America, right? When they first came up with the train, the most successful business people in that era focused on the trains, and they went all in on the trains. They didn't give a shit about anything else. They focused on that and made a ton of money out of that and built their lives for generations to come. And I think property and any business really is that same thing, in that what you want to do is set your sights on something that you think is going to work. Make your formula, make your model, make your strategy, and stick to it, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes, in the main, 95%. Obviously, we got thrown a few curveballs a few years ago. So, you know, when you're in the short-term rental game and Boris Johnson's telling everyone that the country's locking down and no one's allowed to move out the house, then, you know, you start to panic a bit. And then sure enough, I think that week we had something like 471 cancellations, and it was just like, right, where does this end? And, you know, spreadsheets out, how much cash have we got, at what month do we go bust? And, you know, it was quite leery. So I think at that point I was very much full on serviced accommodation, and I kind of had to make some adjustments. I had a few properties that I'd bought on the BRR strategy that were completing, so I decided to take some tenants on. I then did a bit of, you know, HMO stuff as well, turned a few of my rent to rent into HMOs, the bigger ones. So kind of started diversifying a bit. But as COVID kind of left us, I've just got no passion for tenants. I've just served, I honestly, I've I've just served 5 Section 21s. I want them out. I want the properties back. Nice people, but I want those properties back. I know I can make more money from them. I've literally, today actually marks the 2-week possession notice period for one of my tenants who owes me $9,500. Needless to say, I'm now going to have to pay to get bailiffs in there. I had a tenant that I moved in COVID who just trashed the place. I've just had no luck with tenants. So for me, I'll choose a guest all day long over a tenant. And that's definitely driven, I think, not only the monetary side of it, but, the experience I've had with tenants. And that might come down to me, the way that we're managing them, the way that we're checking on them. Obviously you've got a very successful, agency, and, I'm pretty sure you've got these headaches, but maybe not on the same level. Yeah, for me, it was just, I've just got no passion in tenants. So for me, it's like all in short-term rentals. But what I have done over the last, I guess, 2 years is really, niche down into the type of guests that we're bringing into the property. And we do it a bit differently, I think, to most, and that's definitely helped with our scale and our growth, because I almost, needless to say we don't do tourism anymore, and I definitely don't do weekenders anymore, and that makes our job a hell of a lot easier.
Yeah.
So, but we've worked very hard to get it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the serviced accommodation sector, if you like, let's call it the sector, that's boomed over the last couple of years. And there's been so much development around the country that I've seen a lot of rent-to-renters, rent-to-serviced accommodation, rent-to-HMO type of investors. They've all been coming to my agencies and saying, hey, can we rent this? Can we do a company let from you? And, that gets my attention as well, because I look at that and think, well, okay, if you're looking at it, then I should be looking at it. And like I said to you earlier, that's how I've got into rent-to-rents myself. But what are you seeing in that sort of area? And let me just quickly add to that, because there's a lot of people that are landlords of just regular straight out buy-to-let properties that might be looking for other ways that they can make more money from their properties.
Yeah, so I think there's kind of probably two answers to the question there. So one is serviced accommodation, or short-term rentals as I call it, is seen as a shiny penny syndrome sort of model. And I think on the surface looks great. Everyone's posting all these massive revenues coming in. But what you find, we're actually acquiring a few businesses at the minute who are smaller operators who, maybe 2-3 years into it, and they've not leveraged, they've not automated, they've not got staff, and they're just like 24/7 job, and they're just like, that is short-term rentals. The revenue on the front end's a nice bit, but that doesn't keep you motivated enough if you don't systemize the back end, like I've done, and get yourself out the ops. And I think there's a lot of people, go on training courses, watch YouTube videos, whatever, do the sort of rent to SA model, but do it very badly. And I think when regulation and stuff comes in, licensing, things like that, I think it will really help the industry. Dubai is, I would say, streets ahead on that front. There's a lot of regulation. Every property's got to be licensed. There's certain things that you have to have in the properties, and it just makes it so much more professional, and it works so much better. So I'm all in favor of that. I think we've seen the kind of, prior to COVID, short-term rentals was very popular because of that reason, the shiny penny sort of syndrome. Then COVID hit and everyone was like, oh, well, I know I promised you 5 years rent guarantee, but actually I have no money anymore. So there's the keys back, which didn't actually do us any favors, because then when we were trying to speak to landlords about it, they were like, well, yeah, I had someone say that like last time and then I've got my keys back. So, but now that that's gone away again, obviously now it's become popular again and everyone's kind of flooding back into the market. So I think you're always going to have that, but as long as, you're a brand, you've got trust, and you're ahead of the game and you're doing it professionally, I think you'll always, do well from it. In terms of landlords who are running buy-to-let portfolios, we are definitely starting to see a lot more now asking us or wanting to engage in our management side of things rather than the fixed rent guarantee. They're wanting a bit more lion's share of the profit. And I think a lot of them, when we speak to them, are just very similar stories to mine, like just sick of tenants. They're not making enough money off them. Now they've obviously got mortgage interest rises. So it just kind of, they're looking at ways, right, okay, well, how can I make more money from the property? How can I have less hassle? So either one works for us. I prefer rent to make more money, but honestly, it's not about us, it's about the client. And if we can have a management client and they want to give us all their portfolio and manage it for a long period of time, then that works for us as well. And it works for them because they then get to earn more money, and therefore they'll probably more than likely reinvest that money into more property and then naturally give that back to us as well. So it's kind of a full circle. And I've actually got one landlord who he had he had about 21 properties when I first met him. This was back when I very first started, and I kind of was renting, through his portfolio as they were coming off. And the last 2 years, he's been basically saying, where can I buy that works for you? So he's been buying for us, but for him as well, but still on the fixed rent guarantee. But in the last 2 months, he's like, I've got 4 properties coming up for end of tenancy and I'm going to kick them out. I want you to manage them this time. So he's like, I'll furnish them, I'll do it. So he's now wanting more of a lion's share of the money. And so I think there is a bit of a change there in mentality with landlords and just what's going on. And, at the end of the day, landlords are business people in the main, and they just want to increase their profitability, keep their costs down and make as much as they can and reinvest that money. And I think short-term rentals gives you that opportunity. And I also think it protects you on the downside from things like mortgage interest rates increasing, tenants not paying. I mean, the laws, don't get me started on tenants. Honestly, the laws are just like, even the message I got off the solicitor yesterday, you can pay, I think it was 260 quid to get it done in like a normal court, and it'll take 12 to 16 weeks. Or you can pay 1,500 quid and get it done like within 4 to 8 weeks to the high court. It's like, so the government's actually making money out of me, not earning from my tenant, It's just like, it just drives me insane.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. And, like you said at the beginning of that, there's, it could be a number of reasons why you ended up with those tenants. But the fact of the matter is that in the buy-to-let space, if you don't buy correctly, that's one thing. If you don't tenant correctly, and if you don't manage correctly, then you're always running the risk. And actually, you could do all of those things great, and then your tenant could be made redundant. They've got a couple of kids and they get stuck in the property not paying rent. It doesn't really matter, but...
Both my tenants that have screwed me over checked out everywhere.
Yeah.
All the referencing, everything. Absolutely clean as a whistle. And then they've been... Anyway, that nightmare will be over soon. So.
Yeah, good. Well, it's like any investment, isn't it? There's always going to be those risks, whether you invest in Apple or property or, cryptocurrency, whatever it might be. There's always going to be those risks. But what I guess you've done is increased your income from the same investment vehicle. And yes, there might be additional risks, but because you've got such an increased income from one investment vehicle, it balances out across your portfolio, right?
Yeah, so I mean, not every property works. You might get a dud, as I call it, but in the main, even a dud property will probably break even across a year. You might be a tiny bit down, but for the majority, they do make. I think I worked out my short-term rental owned portfolio makes 3.6 times more than my tenanted portfolio. So, that's quite big numbers and quite a difference in profit margin. And then it's more about what can you do with that extra cash? Because, once you've paid your wages and paid yourself and all that sort of stuff, you're then building this cash pile. So it's like, I've got to reinvest that. So it allows you to actually buy more assets. So, I've been able over the last 3 years, I've been able to, fund myself, several £1 million portfolio that I now own. And that's mine. No one can ever take that away from me, using the cash from rent to rent, management, and obviously the owned assets as it's continued to come through. So it really does have many benefits, but it's not easy. And I hate seeing all these people jumping into it thinking that it's a business. It's not like being a landlord. Like, really, I probably shouldn't be on this podcast because I'm not actually a landlord. I class myself as a landlord. We're a sales and marketing business. And at the back end, we've got to do hospitality, but really we're marketeers. We've got to drive bookings. We've got to, we now only rely on the OTAs. In Dubai, we're 90% direct bookings, 90% and above. In the UK, we're about anywhere from 67% up over, depending on the month. So we're really working hard on getting off the OTAs, because most people that are in short-term rentals, they actually don't own a business. They just are employed by Airbnb. That's it. Because if Airbnb stopped tomorrow, they have no business. I spoke in Miami last week, or the week before, and I said, right, everyone stand up who's in short-term rental hosting. Everyone stand up. And I was like, right, stay standing if you control more than 40, if the Airbnb, Booking.com, etc. are more than 40% of your bookings. most of them still stay standing if you think you've got a business if they went out of business overnight, and pretty much everyone sat down, you know. And it's like, it just shows you like you haven't got a business if you're not building a foundation. And when Airbnb did their whole little stint around COVID, it really like hit home to me that I need to get off this. I need to get off this drug. And you know, and I've worked really hard. We've got, you know, full-time SEO team now. We've got, you know, we've just launched our new direct booking website, which is, you know, being cleverly mapped out, and it's all in aid of getting to be so self-sufficient that we don't even need the channels anymore. And I think that is a proper short-term rental business, not, oh, I've got some properties and I'll just bang them on Airbnb.
OTAs, by the way, online travel agents?
Yeah. So, yeah.
Cool.
So, because they control you, and they continue to increase commissions, they continue to refund guests. You've got no control over anything. And as I said, you know, if they turn their platforms off, you have no ways of bringing in any bookings. And that's a sad state of affairs for the majority of, it's even worse in the States. Like, they literally don't even think about direct bookings. It's just all Airbnb, and it's madness. But I think that's what really sets us apart, but has also helped us drive the success, because, you know, we're paying less commissions out, we're in more control of our guests, we're getting longer bookings, we're, you know, not turning over as many times, so our costs are kept low. And I think last month in the UK, our average length of stay was 26 days. So, right. You know, whereas I would imagine most people is probably somewhere like 3.5 to 3.6, something like that. But yeah, it's a lot of education. You've got to teach yourself these things. You don't know what you don't know. If I listen back to that first podcast we did, no, I definitely, you know, didn't know anything that I know now, but the experience, the lessons, the pain, I think teaches you more than anything. And yeah, it's a great industry. And I'm not sure that I will ever go back to the tenant side of things now.
Yeah, and what I'm getting from this as well is that you've kind of created your own little niche, really. And I'm not saying no one else does it, but you've created a niche in that you've taken serviced accommodation, holiday lets, short-term lets, all of that stuff. And it sounds like you've got rid of holiday let market of the little 1 and 2 nighters. Yeah. And you've really focused on the short-term let stuff, which is more about, perhaps, I don't know, actually you elaborate. Yeah. I'm interrupting with an important request. Use my lettings team to find your next tenant, to fully manage your property, or both. It doesn't matter whether you've already got a letting agent and you fancy a change, or you just want to find a good tenant. Email me direct. It's tom@soanegroup.co.uk. Or use my property team to find you a good buy-to-let property. Off-market, below market value, high yield buy-to-let properties. Join my buy-to-let VIP list and we'll send those buy-to-let properties straight to your email. Again, contact me direct. It's tom@soanegroup.co.uk, or you can message me through my Facebook page, or just comment below and we'll contact you.
I mean, the hotels that I've got, they're different. They have to operate on a much smaller scale, but they're in good locations, and that works. But even then, we're still attracting longer bookings, the way that we market and position ourselves. The majority of the stuff that we get, it ranges. I mean, in the UK, it's very much, you know, corporate travel, contractors, you know, various different businesses needing, you know, longer stays in different cities for their employees. And in Dubai, it's very much expat relocations that we work with. We work with corporates. There's a few rules out there which mean they can't always just get a property straight away when they land in the country, so they do need somewhere. So we kind of tapped into that market. I kind of spotted that early on, and have kind of positioned ourselves that way as well. Like, if you look at our website, the way we talk more about expat relocations rather than, hey, come to Dubai on a holiday. You know, and at the minute we've got, as sad as it is, but we've literally got Russians like escaping Russia and booking like yearlies with us. Just like, we'll have a flat for a year, just, you know, just there's the money, let's just stay. And so we're doing a lot of that business at the minute. But it's, again, it's not come by chance. It's a lot of, I'm very analytical. I don't go near a property now. The closest I go to a property right now is on a Google spreadsheet, and that is it. And that is it. You know, you're looking at numbers. That's all we're doing. Like, what's that one doing? You know, and then we'll tweak the data to say, right, let's put a longer minimum night stay on the property and what effect has that had over the last 3 months? And we're kind of just testing and analysing. And from doing that, we've been able to, I think, create quite a unique model that then does drive these longer stays and ultimately make us more money, which is the aim of the game, really.
Yeah, and look, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier on about, look, this is not easy. If you're a landlord that's got a buy-to-let portfolio right now and you're thinking of ways, how can I make more money out of this? The obvious thought is to try and go down the same route that you've gone down of renting those properties out on a short-term basis rather than long-term tenancies. But it's not easy. There's a ton of work, right? And actually, I think this podcast is probably perfect for you because it sounds like what you've done. You mentioned a few buzzwords: automate, systemize, and outsource. And that's exactly what the anonymous landlord is. So it's your landlord that doesn't landlord. And what you've built, if I'm hearing this correctly, is an entire system where, and we'll come on to the franchise bit in a minute, but an entire system where all of this stuff is being managed for you.
Yeah, I mean, if I had my time again, I would just get properties and give them away. Someone else manage them.
Yeah.
I went deep into it, obviously acquired a lot quite quickly. So I kind of had to build the back end out. And then I figured, well, I've been through the pain, so I might as well just, you know, roll with it now. But it does allow us, obviously, that opportunity to manage for other owners. And yeah, I think you've got two options. You either, you know, a bit like you buy a let, you either just give it to an agency and they just manage it and do the bits and bobs. Same with us, we'll just manage it, we'll drive the bookings, we'll, you know, control the costs and then obviously pay out each month. Or you have to build all that yourself. And, you know, depending on how big you grow, how quick you grow, and what your mindset is to employees, I think that's a big thing. A lot of people see them as costs, whereas I see them as investments, is to whether you'll actually build a back-end team that's worthy enough to actually function a hospitality business. And don't get me wrong, like, we're not perfect. You know, it's the back end is hard work. This business, you know, I was talking with my friend in Cannes, and, you know, he's got a very big portfolio down there, and we're saying, like, it's mental how multi-million-pound businesses around the world are run by cleaners. And that's no disrespect to cleaners, but they're not business people, they're not business focused, they're not entrepreneurial, you know, because if they were, there wouldn't be a cleaner. And they are effectively, you know, if they do a bad job, it's us that gets the shit. If they do a good job, it's us that benefit from that. If they don't turn up, it's us that get it in the neck, you know. So our brands and our profitability rely on cleaners. It's madness. It's absolute madness. So in that instance, no management company, no short-term rental company is going to be perfect, because you're relying on unreliable people to actually support your business. Yes, you have plan B and plan C, D, E, and F sometimes, but you know, it is hard. And I think that's very much where I think people get demotivated by this game and go, do you know what, enough's enough. I don't care how much the money's coming into the front end. I can't deal with that anymore. And I've been there, definitely. You know, I've definitely looked at, listen, how much does it cost me just to give this to somebody else? Yeah. You know, and, but, you know, I do feel like we are ahead of the game. You know, I've just recruited 2 developers in-house who are building out a full software suite for me. That'll take us about 8 months, and that'll basically cover every single bit of kit that I currently use with external providers. I'm bringing it all in-house. Obviously, there's quite an investment in that, but long-term, that's a huge asset to the business. So hopefully you can kind of get that the back end isn't just ring a cleaner and say, can you come and clean? Yeah. There's a lot of moving parts to it. It's like a logistics company at the back end. Yeah, totally. And you know, I mentioned quite a lot in quite a few episodes on this podcast about things like your reason for getting into property in the first place, right? Because nobody invests in property, whether you do buy-to-let, short-term let, HMO, whatever it is. Nobody invests in property so that they can become a tenancy manager or a property manager or an administrator. Nobody. Yeah. But yet what tends to happen is when you're presented with an extra 50 quid a month, do it all yourself, then you tend to try and do it all yourself. It baffles me.
But hey, I've got a load of shares in Meta and Apple and Amazon, right? I don't go and work for them. I just have the shares.
And that's Warren Buffett's strategy, isn't it? Just buy companies basically and let them do the work. But
right. So, all right, perfect. Well, I like what you've described there in that, if we're talking to buy-to-let landlords right now and we're saying, look, what else can you do? What we're saying is you can go in the short-term let market, you can go for that, you can change your current strategy to make more money, but don't bloody do it yourself. Get a company in to run it all. So talk us through how that looks and what someone could do if they've got a portfolio.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we have a brand standard, and this is one thing that I've done over the last probably 15 months. We've probably got rid of 100 owners in the last 15 months where the stock's not up to the mark anymore. It's got to be out the box. They're not willing to improve it. They're in not great areas, although the data might say they'll work. We've had, people putting windows through. We've had, just in bad areas, they just don't like the fact there's an Airbnb next door, so they just put the windows through all the time. So we've been through that pain, and now the first part of it for us is, we don't actually accept everybody like we used to and like most companies do, because it's our brand that gets tarnished, not the landlords, because they're just sat behind the scenes. So that for me has been a big move. Obviously we lost a lot of revenue from that, but long term I know that's going to pay us back tenfold. So we have a brand standard. So first and foremost, we check that the property is up to brand standards, and if not, we'll recommend what it needs to be. If they say they don't want to spend the money, we'll say, okay, well, you need to go and work with somebody else. And I think that's really important as a property manager to be able to have that gumption to be able to sack a client or say no to somebody. So we would then, I try and put people off, because if then they still want to work with us, then they're a good client.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then if it ticks the boxes, which majority of properties do, then we will give them a full analysis of what we think we can drive. We use various data softwares, and we'll just give them the external data. And then from that, they can make a decision. Obviously, we explain how our fee works and how we run it. But in essence, we get it listed across all the websites that we're on. We run all of our back-end email campaigns, things like that, including the properties, launch the properties, try and just get them driven, speak to our corporate network, and then just drive the bookings in at the front end, collect the money, pay the bills throughout the month. So the cleaning, the linen, the maintenance, and then at the end of the month, obviously that just gets deducted from the revenue we collected minus our fee. And then we pay them the rest back, and then they just need to take care of bills, Wi-Fi, mortgages if they've got them, or rents if they're to rent the rent. In all fairness, as part of the qualification, I'm taking on less and less rent-to-rent deals, because unless they're a portfolio, reason being is the majority of rent-to-rent deals from people who are maybe it's their first, second, or third one, they've either bought them off a deal sourcer and the figures are rubbish as usual, or they are done it themselves and not got the data right and they're expecting too much. So that analysis phase we normally do, they'll probably go, oh, well, I was told I'll get £150 a night and you're only saying 95. And they'll say, well, we know what we're doing, and whoever's giving you those figures don't. So that's the reality. But if that doesn't work for you, then it doesn't work for us either, because we don't want to be driving that amount of money and then you're saying you're not making me enough, because then they just go on Facebook and start shouting and blah, blah, blah. But actually, it's not our fault. The fault was actually where they got the deal from at the beginning. I think you mentioned earlier about buying your buy-to-lets in the right area. It's the same with this, whether you're renting them or buying them, you've got to get them in the right locations and get the right property types to make the money. And it's not our fault if the money's not being made, because I do think that we will overachieve the general market in terms of what we drive in terms of revenue and length of stay. And I do think that there's proof there that we have done that over the years and consistently, versus a property manager that just bangs out on Airbnb and doesn't really know what they're doing and puts a 2-night minimum stay. So that's kind of what it looks like for us. So when we do work with clients, we do tend to work with them for quite a long period of time because of the due diligence at the front end and sort of setting those expectations. Portfolio landlords are definitely one of our focus points. Multi-unit landlords, so anybody that's got a block of flats, they work incredibly well for what we're doing. And they're the type of people that really we want to work more with and grow with over the years.
Perfect. And I mean, look, I'm asking for myself now, because I've got, as I've got a portfolio up in the northeast as well as other parts of the country. But Certainly the portfolio up in the Northeast, I'd be silly if I didn't consider this, especially now where, I've got a couple of properties that are coming up for a mortgage renewal.
Yeah.
And inevitably my mortgage interest rate is going to be higher than what it was a few years ago. So I'm obviously, I'm a businessman at the end of the day. So I'm looking for ways where I can maximize that income. Yeah. So,
I think I've had a few statements through as well coming off fixed. And, I think, in the Northeast, you probably made 350 to 500 quid max per month on net profit. Yeah. Your mortgage is probably 150, 200 quid. That's now about to go to 400 quid.
Yeah.
Because, if I'm actually just, without going into that, I'm pretty much just going to ride the SBRs for a while and just see how it goes, and just,
yeah, same.
I just, and then decide what's happening, but, at the minute, I think there's a 4% spread on the base rate to fixed terms, which I think is ridiculous. So, but yeah, it's definitely another opportunity, but, it's a case of looking at each unit, analysing the area, setting expectations, and then, working together on that trust basis that, we do know what we're doing, and we'll try our absolute best to drive as much revenue as we can at those properties, keep the costs as low as possible. We don't make any money from maintenance or anything like that. That's not what I'm in this for. The more I find, and it's the same with franchisees, like the more money I can put in someone's back pocket, the more chance they're going to get another unit and give it to us to then earn more from, So that's kind of my methodology of these long-term relationships and working with people. And I think, rather than just thinking, oh, well, I'll get like 6 months worth of quick fix here, there, and drip a bit here and drip a bit there. It's very much just like, just transparency. That's what we do. If you like it, great, we'll work together. If we don't, then there's plenty of other people out there.
Yeah, I'm with you. Maybe we'll talk about that another time, and I'd be certainly interested to see your thoughts on that. But what about finding properties? If I say, right, I got 30 grand cash, right, and what do I do with it?
Yeah, interesting question. For me, with 30k, I'd get 6 rent to rent, because I'm very much like, at the minute the asset purchaser market is just. It's just a headache, like the conveyancing's taking forever, the mortgage companies are all over the place, it's just trying to remortgage stuff. It's just, so right now I'm very much the next 6 months just focusing on just rent to rent. It's always a focus because, we can take 5-10 of them on next week, this week, we can take 10 on the week after. It's like the sky's the limit, and every single one of them done correctly, analyzed correctly, makes money. So it's a case of just how many of them can you get? And that's pretty much what my acquisition team do on the ground, is just constantly speaking with landlords, and we're driving leads for landlords wanting, fixed rent guarantees. But with 30k, I would, look at, 6 or so rent to rent units in the right locations. You'd probably have a bit of change from that if you could find some good ones. And that should add, 3.5 grand a month to your revenue net, so you're earning an extra 40k a year there or thereabouts.
What about if I'm thinking about more of buying assets?
Yeah.
Again, we're probably talking the difference between 30k for 6 rent to rents or 30k for buying one property, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of my thought process. You buy your one property and make 500 quid a month. I'm going to buy 6 and make 3.5 grand. So, but if
I'm only saying it by the way, because there are a lot of people that I know that will look at it the same way as you do. Look at it of 30 grand, what's the maximum return on that investment I can achieve? Yeah. But there are other people that have that security and comfort in owning the asset as well. Yeah. So we should cater for both, right? Yeah,
100%. My thought process has slightly changed on buying assets. So I think at the beginning, and I think this probably helps depending on where your audience is. So if you're at the beginning, you've got one pot of money, you want to try and spin that as many times as you can to get as many assets as you can, because you can only make so much cash flow from one asset. I don't invest for equity growth. I'm honestly not bothered by it. I know it'll happen. If it does, great. If it doesn't, if I do things right anyway, that's going to be the kids. So I'm not even going to see that. So I invest for cash flow. So I think at the beginning, you want to try and get as many units as you can. So you've got to operate the BRR strategy. You need to buy cheap, you need to remodel, and you need to refinance and make sure your numbers are correct so your money's not getting stuck. That has been a very difficult market the last 12 or so months. I think no matter how, even us as experienced investors have found that market tough, and we're having to do probably bigger refurbs than we wanted to try and add the value extensions or, loft conversions or whatever. But that is, I think, where you've got to start if you've only got, say, 30K and that's all you've got. If you've got, maybe a bit more, 100K, I would potentially just go and buy 4 units ready to go, 25% deposit on each, and then just bang them as short-term rentals. And in about 2 years, you'll have that money washed back out. Could even be sooner if you get good. And I think, that's the great thing about short-term rentals versus, a typical deal, or a typical landlord will probably look at a 5-year return on cash if they're buying a buy-to-let and, looking at, some are even 10 years depending on the profitability. But for me, I think with short-term rental, you can get that money back out quicker because obviously you're increased in your revenue and your profitability.
Yeah, and how do you give us a couple of tips on how you would buy for short-term rentals? What's the first few things that you would look at? Let's look at the Northeast, because I love the Northeast for investment. I'm the same as you, by the way. I invest for cash flow. If it grows in value, amazing. I've got portfolios in other areas of the country which grow in value or are more likely to grow in value. But if you're always investing for cash flow, then one way or another, your cash will grow.
Yeah.
Right. But what do you look for in buying a property for short-term rentals?
It's a good question, and I don't think there's one sort of straightforward answer. I think most properties work, and especially if you're buying where you're on a mortgage rather than a rental, you've got more chance of it working because your break-even point's a lot less. Yeah. And really, all you're trying to do is get more than you would as a buy-to-let. So you don't need to. Like I've got a house in like outskirts of Durham, and it probably only runs at about 56% occupancy. But it still makes more than it would if it was a buy-to-let. So for me, that's fine because that achieves the goal that I'm trying to achieve, is more cash flow from that unit. But in areas, it depends. Like Dubai, for example, obviously it's all apartments. So villas aren't as appealing as apartments. Apartments work well because they're in the best areas. Whereas, say in Newcastle, like right now, our sort of 4, 5, and 6 bed houses are doing incredibly well because the corporates want maximum for their money. So they know if they can get more people in a house, then they need to put in hotels, then, the cost basis for them, because it's just an expense, works. So it totally depends. But having said that, we've got 2-bed terraced houses, we've got, 1-bed flats, and they all work well as well. So I think it's more about finding the right area for what you want to do. So I know I analysed, someone offered me a property in somewhere in South Wales. I'm not too familiar with sort of the different cities and stuff and villages, but the data just didn't work. It was a 2-bed terraced and it was like 49% occupancy, and it just didn't work. So there are some areas that I think don't work, and then similarly there's some areas where there's parts of, like, say, Sunderland that you just don't want to have an operation. But
notice you've picked on Sunderland there, mate.
So not only have we got an amazing football team right now compared to them, but so it's I think this is where the experience kicks in, and I think this is where like 2-3 years ago I didn't know this. I just kind of potluck, I'll take it and tried it. But now I've studied the data, we analyze the data, we look at what's working, we look at what's not working, probably more than anything. And that gives you a clear picture of, they're working quite nicely, they're not working so well. Like during COVID, once COVID happened, like London was an absolute shit show. Like it was like, get out of London. And that happened, that lasted for about 18 months. Like the other properties were ticking along. Yeah, we didn't have weekends, but they were ticking along. London was just a ghost town. It was like, the data told us that, so we made the right decisions strategically to protect the company. So it's stuff like that I think you've got to be aware of. But I think, coming back to, your landlord that wants to be passive, when they work with a professional company like ourselves or anyone similar who knows what they're doing, they, we'll advise, like if you say, I want to buy in, if you come to me and say, Ryan, I've got 100K, where should I buy in Newcastle? I'll say, you need to buy that, and that. And that's because we know that you'll then give them to us and it'll work for everybody, But a side note on that, I'll only do that for serious people because I don't want everyone just pitching me deals saying, will this work, will that not work? But there's plenty of data. We use AirDNA a lot. It's a good data tool. It gives you a lot of data, a lot of information. It can sort of project what your revenue is going to be. And that's a good tool that we kind of use a lot of these days, and the numbers are fairly accurate.
Okay. Yeah, really good. And the last point on that, if I'm a landlord, well, my podcast is called The Anonymous Landlord, so you get the gist of what I'm about to ask you. If I wanted to be, let's say I said to you, here's a property in NE4, it's set up for a HMO, here you go, take it, I'm off.
Yeah.
Can that be done? Can someone be truly anonymous to the whole thing?
Yeah, 100%. So, all we need is the keys, and then we just work with you on, right. We try not, I try not to do furniture packs in the UK anymore because they're just a pain and there's no money in them. For the amount of time it takes my team to put them together, we can concentrate on other things. So I prefer there's the keys, it's ready to go. In the Northeast, we can operate a bit differently because we do actually hold a warehouse full of stock. So we can be a bit more flexible in the Northeast. But if you've got HMO that's probably already dressed and set up, it'll tick most of the boxes. It might just be a case of we need to put a feature wall in, or we need to put some plants in, or whatever. But yeah, in the main, that sounds like it's going to tick the box. It is very much just give us the lockbox code and we'll go and retrieve the keys. We'll do a deep clean on it. We'll send in a professional photographer and get it properly photographed, because that is one of the biggest things in this game is making sure that you've got that staging correct at the beginning. And then we just do everything else. We list it. Obviously, you need to sign your contract, which is e-signed, very easy. We do ask you to fill in an onboarding form, which just helps the team list it better, so they're not having to keep coming to you and saying, where's the gas meter, where's this, where's that, where's that. So once we've got that detail, we put that into our back-end system, so it's stored forever, and the guys can use it and search it. And then we just go running it, and just driving that revenue. Give you access to your bookings online. You've got a portal you can log into and see it if you really want to. You can see what's happening, what your length of stays are, what your revenue is, and then obviously you get your investor statement at the end of each month and your money. Simple as that, really. And you can just sit on a beach in Dubai and collect your cash. Well,
I've got, off the top of my head right now, I've got 4 properties that I'll definitely fire across to you to have a look at. One of them's a HMO, one of them's a lovely cottage in probably the prime location in Darlington. I've got another one, anyway, Northeast, Newcastle areas.
Yeah. Hey, the biggest stock actually is working very well for us up here at the minute. I think it's more the sort of guest type that we're now sort of focusing on. It suits probably a bit more. But I think there's definitely a bit of a coincidence there that the way we've kind of changed our strategy is leaning more towards the bigger stock. But don't get me wrong, the little stock's still performing, incredibly well as well, So it's just doing what we're doing, and, just keep doing more of it. As I kind of said earlier, just, if you're good at something, just keep doing more of it, and you should naturally yield the same result.
Well, what I'll do then, after this, I'll send you across the details, have a look at it. And if we could do some business together, then great. And what I'll do for anybody listening to this is I'll give you an idea of what I'm achieving from these properties. As long as Ryan says, yep, they're good, we'll take over and we'll put them out as short-term lets. I'll let all the audience know how that's going so that you can get a bit of real-time experience. But I want to finish up by just asking, look, you've given us a lot of information here about short-term lets and about how you can make more money in other ways from your existing properties and risks and rewards, things like that. But I guess everyone's going to be thinking, well, this all sounds fantastic, but what the fuck am I going to do? How am I going to get this done? So cue Ryan Luke to tell us how you can save everybody's time and energy and effort.
Yeah. Just don't bother is probably the easiest.
No, that was a terrible sales pitch, mate.
Yeah, no, we so about what was it, end of 20, God, where are we at now? End of 2021. So it's been just over a year, probably about 14 months, and I was thinking, how can I scale this thing quicker? So my initial thought was, I recruit salespeople in every postcode in the UK, give them a load of money, show them the ropes of how to find, rent, manage contracts, assets, etc. Then I thought about all of the HR and the recruitment and all of that sort of stuff. And I realized that could be quite a task. I think it was achievable, but it was, it looked a lot when I mapped it out. So I had this kind of light bulb moment of franchising the business and basically taking away the pain points that most people have in this business, which slows them down, which is the back end. So I designed a franchise which effectively, would suit a lot of, as you said, the passive investor landlord to an extent. They get to do the fun stuff. Like for me, there's nothing more fun than doing deals with landlords and estate agents and, getting the contract signed and getting that property over the line, and then, them ringing you up and being like, I've got more. And that for me is the enjoyable bit about this whole industry that we're operating in. The pain is dealing with the guests, because as much as we love them, they're a pain in the arse. And, there's, various reasons. Everyone's got different expectations. I say it quite often, there will be people go and stay in the 7-star Burj Al Arab and complain. It's a 7-star hotel. We'd be thinking, how can you ever complain? But there will be, because it won't meet their expectations of what they see as value for money. And that's unfortunately hospitality. And I think you've got to accept that. So, but what I found in my days when I was coaching people was I could quite easily get them to sort of 10, 15 properties quite quickly by the methods that we use with the deal sourcing and the marketing and everything like that. But then what I found is they wouldn't listen and expand their back end team or do that side of it. And they'd blow up, and then they end up going 15, 14, 10, and then eventually they go, I want out. Or then they start recouping again, and they've wasted years. So I'll say, right, what I want is, because my end target is 5,000 units by the end of 2024. So I'm like, how do I get there quicker? So if I can keep people moving on the front end and support them as well, and then we run the back end so they're not getting tied up in that, then it's a good fit. And that really seems to be appealing to a lot of people. So they're not only buying into a brand that's already proven, and also if I come into your agency and I'm like, hey, I'm Ryan, I was on a Samuel Leeds course last week, I want to start short-term rentals, you'd be like, yeah mate, fuck off. So whereas if I come in and I'm like, hey, I'm Ryan, I'm part of Luke Stage, we manage £80 million worth of property, we're looking to acquire 14 units in this location, have you got anything? Yeah, do you want to sit down and let's talk? It's a different story altogether. And also what I've found is just them being able to use the brand and have their business cards, etc. It just gives them a new leaf of confidence. So even when they're brand new in the game, they can like go out with confidence, chest out, and be like, I'm going to get some deals here because I've got this big brand behind us that are, proven. We've got the trust certificates, we've got, all the certifications, blah, blah, blah. So it's so far, we're 14 months into it. I think we've got about 13 or 14 franchisees now so far. We're getting more and more interest across the globe, not just in the UK. And it's a great fit. The people that are in it are getting great results and fast, which is exactly what I designed it for. And they love the fact that they don't have to deal with the back end. So
what you've done is you've combined all of the training, coaching and mentoring you've ever done. Mm-hmm. Now turned that into a franchise where people can take your franchise, so they are free to just go out and get properties and then pass them to your back office team, who will run it all, fill it up, get the guests, get the revenue, and make it all. Basically what you're doing is you're empowering somebody to be an entrepreneur without having to be the manager operator.
Correct. Yeah.
And that sits with me. And really, I've been buying letting agents, and with a view to looking at those portfolios that are under management and seeing what opportunities there are. Like I've just agreed to buy one in the New Forest, right? It's a top spot for people here. And I know that a load of those properties are ripe for this. So, these sorts of things, for anybody listening to this that's got properties or letting agents, I get loads of letting agents listening to this. Maybe this is something you could bolt on to letting agencies as well. Or is that what you wanted to talk to me about?
No, that's something else. But no, it's it can bolt. The main thing is you're buying the brand, which is established. And I think that, as I think it takes a while to build a trusted brand. And I think we've done that, and it allows them to then just have that. Many people might have already seen like other people posting stuff about being part of, like, we give them marketing. We do done for you marketing as well. So we're like, right, this is a post, put that out. This is a post, put that out. And so we're not, it's not just me or my team doing it now. It's like, we've got this network of people now building the brand even more. And even things like, you know, if you go on like Northeast and search on Airbnb, I guarantee you we're on probably at least 6, if not more, of the first 20 listings. But the way that we position ourselves, we stand out. So then people are naturally going to go, who's Luke Stays? They keep popping on my feed. So for me, it's like the more properties we get, like once we've got 5,000, you're going to see us everywhere. And then people can't not then use the signals we use to then come on and book direct with us, because we've got quite a clever way that we take people off the OTAs to book direct. So they get that, they're like, there's so many different spin-off benefits to it versus trying to do it on your own. And the ones that buy into it and buy into the vision and the community and the culture that we've developed and have developed really get it and really perform. And it's really pleasing for me to see, because, you know, that was what I designed it for, was so I could, as you said earlier, empower entrepreneurs to who they know they've got it in them. They just maybe can't do it themselves. And it's just giving them that extra bit of hope.
I love it, mate. And like we were saying earlier on, the journey you've taken from our first interview back then to where you are now and where it looks like you're going to is awesome, mate. And you deserve everything you get.
Appreciate it. It's been hard work. It is, you know, as I was saying earlier on, like this year has been a testing year. You know, we're scaling quickly, and when you're scaling quickly, you've got to employ a lot of staff quickly, which doesn't necessarily mean you're employing the right staff, because sometimes you're just trying to fill a gap. And you know, and then, you know, as you'll know with staff, a bad staff can be toxic to the whole environment, and that can cause issues in performance. And, you know, so there's been a lot of learning curves. I bought a development January last year, and that's been a total waste of money. You know, learned a lot from that. And, you know, there's been a lot I feel like we've learned from this year, but I'm excited to kick on next year based on those learnings. And, you know, probably blown a bit of money this year on certain things, but I kind of don't see that as lost money. I just see it as an investment in my education, and hopefully we'll put it right and move forward. But, you know, in the main, everything's, you know, still going to plan. And I think in business, you can't expect every year to be just plain sailing. And this year has definitely been very up and down, up and down, up and down for the first half of the year. Last quarter was good, and obviously this quarter is looking pretty good as well. And then hopefully we'll kick on next year as well. So, but as you build, you unfortunately have to get staff. And as much as I love my team, and, you know, I couldn't do it without them, there are some that I've had to let go, and, you know, some that have come and then left, you know, and just as you're getting a bit of momentum, and as you know, running staff, that's just part of the game, unfortunately. It's a lot easier when it's just you.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I feel your pain as well. Yes, I'll have a coffee. Thank you. Yeah, I feel your pain, and I've been through it as well, and probably will go through it many, many times. But look, let me finish up by saying to anybody that's listening to this, it's easy to listen to what Ryan's saying, and it's easy to think, oh, do you know what? I want to give this a go. I want to make a bit more money from my properties. But if you're driving and you're thinking, oh, I've got to remember all of this, just contact me. I'm not going to charge anything. I will just connect you up with Ryan, who can talk to you about what you can and cannot do with properties. I'm going to be doing the same. So if you're listening, thinking, I want to make more money, then let me know. Or if you can remember, by the time you finish driving, get in touch with Ryan, Luke. What, Facebook? Probably the easiest one.
LinkedIn. I tend to hang out on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Days, yeah.
Okay. And go for it. Go for it. We're all just trying to make a bit of extra money, right?
You know, the great thing about short-term rentals is the flexibility. So, you know, I always say, what's the worst that can happen? You can always, like, if it's not working, you can stop the operation there and then and just find a tenant. It's not like tenants, like now you're thinking, I've got 10 houses, I'm gonna have to serve section 21s, in a few months I'll have them. It's literally like, Ryan, this isn't working, can you just stop the bookings as of end of the month, and then I'll just find another tenant. Yeah, no worries. You know what I mean? So the flexibility, and that's why I love the game, you know, on the front end flexibility with guests. If they trash your properties, you've got the credit card, so you just wax it. You know, they have no right, so you can kick them out, you know. But on the back end for the landlords, it's like, the flexibility is there. If it's not working out, then, you know, I just think you've got so much to gain and so little to lose. And that's the mentality I would take with it.
Yeah, I am with you, mate. All right, so I'm gonna finish up this interview now, and then after this, we'll have a quick chat about the thing you wanted me to talk about, you want to talk to me about, and then we will talk business after. But I hope you enjoyed that, everyone. This is just another way that you can maximize your property business. You don't have to take a franchise, but if you want to make a business out of it, take a franchise. What's the point in building all of it for yourself? Ryan's done it. So you might as well copy and paste your own way to success, right?
Yeah, 100%.
But if you just want more money from your existing properties, here's one other way to do it. But mate, thank you very much for joining me and sharing all of that. That was a lot of information.
Pleasure, mate. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, you are welcome. So we'll do it again in 6 months, yeah? Right, I'm going to end this episode by saying tune in next week when I'm going to be interviewing, I don't know, Boris Johnson.
I'll tune in for that.
Hi, this is Tom Soane, and I hope you found that useful. Now, my next video is right there, or you can subscribe and follow for more videos just down there. Or if you want to book a call with me and my lettings team or my property team, then you can just click right there. Speak to you soon.